I was going to say good morning everybody, but clearly it's afternoon, as Justine indicated before, and as Kirsten said, my name is David Wilkinson, Manager of Economic Development at the City of Casey, and I'm looking forward, as I'm sure all of you are, to hearing Kirsten sing sometime during this next session. I've entitled this presentation Growing Pains. It's had various, I should say this presentation has been used before at other forums and conferences, and I sort of adapted it slightly for this presentation. But I've entitled it Growing Pains because I think that sort of exemplifies effectively what's happening in terms of the problems that we're facing in the city of Casey. And it really is about an incredible amount of population growth, the urbanisation of significant amounts and tracts of what was agricultural land, and the pressure that still remains on agricultural land in Casey. So in some ways it's a bit of a negative story, but in other ways, if we then talk about, for example, the Bunyip Food Belt, and we talk about the very strong advocacy campaign that City of Casey have mounted to the state government with regard to retaining our agricultural areas, I think there will be some positives to actually come out of this presentation, or at least I hope so. So basically, from a City of Casey point of view, and I suppose it applies to everybody in the room as well, sustainability, climate change, effectively the issues of our time. And you know, we've had some great presentations this morning which cover significant areas with regard to agriculture and food production and food security. And three at the bottom there: transport costs, water insecurity, food security. Very, very relevant issues that face all of us, and in particular in an outer suburban council such as City of Casey, incredibly important. Obviously a key factor in terms of the population growth in Casey and our neighbouring council in Cardinia, which one of the growth areas, is Melbourne at 5 million. Huge pressure on agricultural land, on rural land in general, in terms of accommodating a huge population. I should say, from a personal point of view, I stress it's a personal point of view, and from my economic development perspective, I fully understand growing a population in terms of meeting economic needs and the future of Australia as a whole. So that population growth, although controversial, I think is understandable. What I fail to understand is the way we're going about accommodating that population growth. So, in terms of state government's response to achieving Melbourne at 5 million, they decided to expand the existing growth areas a little bit more. And as part of that process, Casey involved itself in making a case to state government, basically objecting to any large expansion in the urban growth boundary. And from this map here, you'll see that it's slightly changed from that, but the red area was an area investigation for an expansion of the urban growth boundary. And Casey's position was that we absolutely and totally object to that expansion at all. Having said that, and being pragmatic, we did say if you are going to expand, then we can probably accommodate a small area in this sort of pinky purple area as an expansion to the existing urban growth boundary. But really these areas down here, which I'll show you a map later, which are primarily market garden areas which contribute significantly to the economy, provide jobs for people, and more importantly provide food for Melbourne and beyond, are really important to retain. So that was the Casey position. And effectively, as part of our submission, what we said was, well, effectively, we got a small growth area in this area here. Let's develop a Casey agricultural enterprise zone as part of a wider agricultural area as part of the Bunyip Food Belt, and link it to areas, main areas of growth such as Narre Warren, Cranbourne, Dandenong, etc. And also link into the Bunyip Food Belt and the Cooey-Rupp agricultural areas, the quality soils of the Cooey-Rupp swamp areas. As part of this, and running alongside this, is also was the development, the concept of the Bunyip Food Belt. Effectively, three councils got together, Casey, Cardinia and Mornington Peninsula, together with three of the water companies. And it was a project developed primarily as a means of getting recycled water through to agricultural areas that don't currently have recycled water, and to make use of the Carron Downs treatment, the water treatment plant there, which obviously basically treats the water and then currently pumps it straight into Port Phillip Bay. So effectively it was a solution to use that water to benefit the farming community, to grow that farming community, to retain and increase jobs, and to look at attracting new investment into that Bunyip Food Belt area. So just as I just said, Cardinia, Casey, Mornington Peninsula, South East Water, Melbourne Water and Southern Rural Water form the basics of that group. And effectively looking at the reuse of 26 gigalitres per year. So that's 7% of Melbourne's annual consumption of water to be used for support of the agriculture areas. So a really exciting project which, as I say, was sort of born out of the need to use recycled water, but has developed over time into a significant idea and project with regard to economic growth, to supporting the agricultural industry, and also to look at things like food security as well. So it's very much about supporting Melbourne and supporting Australia in terms of food production. So obviously the key features: protect valuable agricultural land from urban growth, and that's what the City of Casey, with the support of the, in particular Cardinia Shire, but also with the Bunyip Food Belt partners, to support Casey in its, I suppose, its battle with the state government in terms of protecting its agricultural areas from urban growth, provide water security for farmers. This is a difficult one in this moment in time. We're in a pre-feasibility stage in terms of the, or just completed a pre-feasibility stage in terms of the Bunyip Food Belt, and part of our sort of discussions with the farming community is about water security and ensuring water security in the future. And of course, what does it do over the last 12 months? It rains like mad. It's like being for me, it's like being back in England again. So that's been a real challenge, but it's something obviously we will develop. And the economic development and employment is again something particularly exciting for me, because it's not just about growing the food, but it's opportunities in terms of looking at the Bunyip Food Belt area as a place for food, for growing the produce, for using that produce, for manufacturing food, and also for processing and distributing food as well. So obviously those are issues again in terms of food that you're all familiar with and have been covered to a certain extent this morning as well, and in particular climate change impacts. It might be all right saying we've had a lot of rain in this last 12 months, but the future doesn't look that great in terms of water, and water security, which leads to food security, is a really important issue. And that just sort of gives some basic figures with regard to the water and how much water could be used to support the farming industry in Casey, Cardinia and Mornington. So, I mean, effectively, this sort of demonstrates, you know, why the Bunyip Food Belt, why in this particular location. One of the key things, and the key things that we argue with the state government and continue to argue with the state government, is the availability of the water at Carrum Downs, but also the rich soils that are available, particularly actually in the Casey area and out at Lang Lang. And 2 minutes, so I'm going to have to really race through that. So also there's issues in terms of workforce. We've got the ready workforce already in the area, and a thriving agricultural industry. I mean, everybody knows about Kooyarrup asparagus. It's famous in Australia. It's probably one of the premier asparagus growing regions in the whole of the world. So effectively, next steps were just at the end of the feasibility study, and we're looking to gain support from pre-feasibility study, looking at gain support from the state government, and then move on to conduct a feasibility study and recruit farmers in terms of that getting that recycled water to them. In terms of sort of Casey argument, we've got over 1,000 hectares of market gardens within the proposed expansion of the urban growth area, and you can see the yellow areas here are the ones that are going to be affected by the expansion of the urban growth boundary. The red lines, and I'm aware Kristen's going to start singing quite soon, but the red lines are the existing recycled water pipes. And so you can see that the attraction of that recycled water to the market garden areas is quite significant. The investigation zone, as I said, is effectively into this red area, and probably a little bit more than that as well. And Casey are still arguing with their case with the state government with regard to having this land actually excluded from urban development. So that means to say to try and protect that land for its for farming, for the market garden areas, and also to look at and expanding those areas if possible in terms of the agricultural and jobs that are available. So Casey's key issues, are they being ignored? It's fair to say they have been ignored up to now, but from our point of view, we're making a very clear advocacy to state government with regard to providing jobs close to home. This is a general problem that we find in the City of Casey anyway, as an outer suburban council, is the fact that we don't have the jobs to meet the needs and demands of the population. 70% of our population leaves Casey every day to go and work somewhere else, and you can imagine the impact that has on the infrastructure. The Monash Freeway doesn't back up now beyond Dandenong, it's now backing up right beyond Berwick. So it's a really difficult one. And one of the key things is that if you don't provide jobs locally, and agriculture is a very key area of our industry sectors where jobs are provided, if you don't provide them locally, there's an extremely high social and economic cost to the local community in Casey. And what I can't understand and what I fail to understand is that there are other alternatives to just continue to expand Melbourne as a city. Certainly the way the previous state government went about proposing the expansion of the urban growth boundaries without even looking at the existing capacity for Melbourne to take on more houses, in my personal view, was just crass stupidity. And to keep on expanding the council, the areas to accommodate more residential development by removing those significant market garden areas and agricultural areas is short-term. It's short-term and, in my view, illogical thinking. Those areas require to be protected for the future, and Casey will continue to make that argument to state government to ensure that is done as well. And I think that's just about it. Sorry, I've gone over.